I can't help but notice that there's a big difference between the way conservatives and leftists present their points of view. This, I think, is indicative of a central difference in our philosophies. Conservatives believe there is such a thing as truth, that the truth is based on reality and reality is made up of facts. This is why you often see conservatives pointing at charts and discussing the latest research just before a large angry crowd attacks them with clubs and beats them into a bleeding mass of pulpy flesh, and then pours alcohol over the still quivering pile of gore and sets it aflame, and then votes the smoldering ashes out of office. Leftists have another point of view, sometimes called relativism, postmodernism, or lying. You see, leftists believe there is no such thing as objective truth. As American philosopher Richard Rorty wrote, quote, and this is a real quote, objectivity is a matter of intersubjective consensus among human beings, not of accurate representation of something non-human. Rorty then called for another whiskey, but he couldn't get an intersubjective consensus that whiskey existed, so he was forced to settle for a beer before stumbling to the empty space where he could have sworn he'd parked his car. Essentially, leftists believe that truth is a story that we tell. This makes language very important because language creates the story that creates the truth. Leftists, therefore, are very concerned with what things are called. If someone who can't walk is called crippled, for instance, that's prejudicial because it creates the impression that he can't walk. Instead, we should refer to him as handicapped. Then, when people start to realize that handicapped is actually a euphemism for crippled, we should call him differently abled. And when that comes to mean crippled, we should call him special. And so on until he leaps out of his wheelchair and shouts, "Hallelujah, I can walk," and falls on his face because he's crippled. And because leftists believe the truth is just a story we tell, they are very good at telling stories. That's why leftists are very successful at creating fiction, as they do in Hollywood and in the New York Times. While conservatives are pointing at charts and facts and figures to show that, for instance, American police officers do not shoot black people for no reason, leftists seize on a story about one black person shot by one police officer and use that story to make black people so angry that they become violent and are shot by the police. Finally, because leftists believe the truth is just a story, they have to make sure that stories they disagree with don't get told. This explains why leftists blacklist conservatives in Hollywood, why they commit acts of violence when conservative speakers come to universities, and why Brian Stelter still has a job on CNN when by all rights he should be standing at the corner of Hollywood and Vine dressed as Spider-Man and taking pictures with tourists. You see, leftists believe their story is a great one. It's a story of equality and peace and universal love. So if you disagree with it, they'll destroy you. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.